Okay, number 18, draft ordinance establishing citation procedures and fines for violations of zoning regulations. This has been kicking around for a while. Some changes were made in compliance or in conformance with the desires of the Board of Selectmen, except for one, I believe, right?
Correct. Yeah, the one thing that they asked for was inconsistent with the state law, so we weren't going to make that change.
Excuse me, I have a question regarding this.
Okay.
Is this a draft ordinance that, is planning and zoning doing this ordinance?
We are drafting the ordinance to send it to the Board of Selectmen. They have to then act on it and decide whether
And isn't the
to.
procedure, as I understand it, under the 8-12A, the procedure is to go to the Board of Selectmen and go to a town meeting, correct?
They'll have to do that.
That's
They'll
for
have
them.
to.
They go to a town meeting or a hearing?
A hearing,
It's a public
meeting.
hearing.
It's a public hearing.
But
They have to hold a public hearing.
Right.
they hold the public hearing, but it will have to,
No.
they approve it? Do you, unfortunately, my computer went down, my internet, because I was reading this, the 8-12A, and it says that municipalities with the legislative body, town meeting is our form of government. That's how ordinances, that's what it says.
What happens
Didn't
is...
this already go to a public hearing?
May I
It has.
explain?
It did.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, you go ahead. You
Okay.
can speak.
Thank you. What happened is this already, Tom asked the regulations committee to look this over, to propose to the Board of Selectmen.
Remember all that?
And then the Board of Selectmen looked at it, there was a public hearing, there was issues, they sent it back to the commission for these revisions.
Yeah.
And now we're sending it back to the
Yes.
Board of Selectmen if the commission agrees with the changes that were made. So that's right. And then the Board of Selectmen does the public hearing again, and they'll vote on it again.
The public hearing doesn't vote on it. The Board of Selectmen votes after taking in
Public hearing.
information from the public hearing.
Well, I was to say, I'm sorry, I could not print it out. If, as I read it, it's not just the Board of Selectmen making the decision on the ordinance. That's what I believe. Does anybody happen to have the statute from 8-12A?
Don't have it handy, but it's.
Well, I did review it, and I believe that it has to be done not just by the Board of Selectmen, but I'd like to revisit that issue.
Actually, that's not
We're merely
really
passing it
enough.
on
We
to the
just-
Board of
Well,
Selectmen.
that's true, no, it's not in our purview, we make,
Correct.
we
So it's not
address
in our purview,
regulations.
so it's not
Well,
really
okay.
appropriate
I
for this
just wanted to
discussion at this
ask
time.
that question. Fine, okay. I would like to comment on this. I
Okay,
feel
comment on
that
it, that's
this-
different.
May I comment
Yes.
on it, please? I feel that, but I wanted to ask the question in case somebody knew the answer to it, but obviously they don't. This is establishing an ordinance which I find to be, I don't quite understand the reasoning for this. I remember the public hearing previously. There was a lot of negative comment at the public hearing about it. I don't know what the purpose of this ordinance is, and I think it becomes somewhat onerous from the way the whole thing is being presented. I also, and this is probably not the time that I should do it, you tell me, Mr. Chairman, what I should do, whether I would like to really address some of the issues on these violations, particularly what our regulations, what our regulations talk about regarding home occupations. I would like to address that specific issue to this board. But I don't know if I should do that under new business or if I should do it at this time, but I specifically have some comments I'd like to make about that.
You probably should take it up under new business,
Okay.
but I'm not entirely sure I understand what specific concern you have. This is an ordinance that allows the zoning enforcement officer to be able to enforce by imposing fines as opposed to filing a lawsuit and doing it that way.
I understand
It's
that.
a more
I
expedited.
understand it, but if you
less
also,
costly.
but it also indicates that if the party involved is, who's being cited, that the first selectman has the authority to appoint a hearing officer for that. I just feel
That's
that
strictly
it's.
by statute, though.
Well, I feel that it's, and I've gone into this a little bit, I feel that it is much more onerous on people to have this kind of, I think that it could be easily violated. I think people could be singled out individually as opposed to having it be a fair way of handling things. I think it could be very much utilized or abused. Sorry, but that's the way I feel about it.
I don't know how that's different than making that same decision, employing the judicial system as opposed to essentially what amounts to a
Well, I think-
magistrate in town.
I think the reason I'm saying that is because I wanted to address that home occupation issue to illustrate how this could be utilized in relationship to that, whether it be judicially or whether it be through this ordinance. That's why I'm pulling them
But
together.
your issue is with the definition and the way we treat home occupations in our ordinance.
Yes, in our ordinance,
regulations.
yes, that
So I
really is
think
my
that's,
issue.
I agree with Anselmo, that issue is a very valid issue to bring up in terms of,
But I'm not
as new
at
business.
this time, yeah.
Rather than how we enforce our regulations, separate questions.
Separate questions, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you can appeal the decision of a hearing officer.
Yes, you can, but I mean, the
The
point is
purpose
to.
was to keep this, local, small, here, make it easier, more expedited, but the person does not lose the rights to appeal and go to the court.
If they so choose, go the court route, that's right. This is to keep it less costly
Right,
and local.
because
Well,
thought
however,
is
the hearing
hopefully you don't
officer
get
is
there.
appointed by the first selectman, so that could have, that's different than going before a court situation where the person is removed into a different venue.
But you still
You
have
remove
that
it there.
available. That's the point. You still have that available.
Well, I understand that, but I see we're putting on another layer here is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's a, in a sense, it's a layer, but it's a layer that is intended, this is my opinion, because I worked with the regulations committee when it was drafted. My only concern was whether you could enforce it against an owner or a tenant. And that's a different issue. I'm not gonna reopen that can of worms. But be that as it may, let's just address your concerns, your very specific concern under new business.
And this will still be, resolve that against I think that is an important issue.
How do we resolve it? We haven't really resolved it. It's by statute and precedent.
That
That's
it
how
has
it's
to be
gonna
against
operate.
the owner rather than the tenant.
The way I read it, it is discretion. It can be covered.
But we had to keep the language consistent with what the state statute said, which is why we didn't do the change, because we stayed consistent with the state statute.
The state statute, unfortunately, is, as so many of them are, ambiguous.
Where the people that came out to speak at the public hearing I didn't hear many people speaking in favor of it.
You know, you're really taxing my memory, but I was there that night, and I made a presentation, and for all I know, it was taped.
Yeah, it was.
So it just remains to be reviewed at this point, but I didn't quite see it that way, that a lot of people were against it. The ones that were against it are the ones that had several cars in their front yards and didn't want enforcement action. Unregistered motor vehicles.
and their neighbors were the ones that were very much for it,
And
as I
yes,
recall,
and
so it was,
so I think it was
yeah.
more than half in favor. But again, you have a tape that can be reviewed. I don't think that's the issue tonight. I just want to see us do what we're supposed to do and address it and send it back to the board of selectmen.
So do
Any
we-
issue you have within the legislative function of the town meeting as opposed to the board of selectmen, that's their problem, and you can certainly raise it. We're only doing what we're supposed to do, which is review it, submit it, resubmit it in this case, and get on with it.
I think the merit of it is that you do keep it local, and you give the ZEO some teeth, which he doesn't, I guess other people have. And I gather this is has been something that we could have done a long time ago, but had not done because of some treble damages that would be against the ZEO that went away. So that's why prompts us to do it now, but they didn't do it. So that's my understanding.
That's what prompted us to do it back in December, it's now June. Okay, so where are we?
I'll make a motion to approve it and send it, no,
Second.
send it back to the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
All in, any further discussion, since we've had plenty? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You're opposed. Abstaining? Okay. Next item,